The title of this video is going to make people uncomfortable. I know that before I even say a word. So let me start by doing something nobody does anymore. Let me explain what I mean before you decide what I mean. The black victims of anti-white racism. Now, some of you just felt something. Some of you got angry. Some of you rolled your eyes. Some of you leaned in. That is fine. All of that is fine. But before you click away or write a comment, give me a chance to lay this out. Because the logic is simple, and it does not require you to agree with anybody's politics to follow it. Here's the question this video is built on. If a person is hated for being white, that is hatred based on whiteness. We can argue about whether to call that racism, we can argue about systems and power and history, but the hatred itself is real. Nobody serious denies that. Now here's the part nobody talks about. What happens when that same hatred hits someone who is partially white? Someone who is mixed race? Someone who is light-skinned? Someone who looks white enough to trigger that hatred, but does not have the resources or the community or the protection that fully white people have. That person is still being hated for their whiteness. The percentage does not change the reason. If someone punches you because you look white, they did not check your family tree first. They saw what they saw and they acted on it. So here's what I'm putting on the table, not as an accusation, not as a gotcha, just as logic. If hatred toward whiteness exists and that hatred lands on people who are partially white, then partially white people are victims of that hatred. Period. The math works or it does not. And if it does not, I need someone to explain to me what else you would call it. There are two groups of people who need to hear this video, and they have completely different blind spots. The first group says anti-white racism is not real, or that it is not important enough to talk about. Let me speak to that group first. If you believe that no one should be judged by the color of their skin, then that principle has to apply in every direction, not just the directions that feel comfortable. You cannot say skin color should not matter, and then say it only matters when it happens to certain people. That is not a principle. That is a preference. Now, I understand the argument. The argument is that white people hold systemic power, so discrimination against them does not carry the same weight. I have heard it. I understand the framework. But here's where that logic falls apart. First of all, the idea that black people do not have enough power to do real damage is just not true anymore. In many communities, in many neighborhoods, in many schools and churches and workplaces, black people hold the local power. They set the rules, they decide who belongs and who does not. And when they use that power to target someone for being white or looking white, that is not a thought experiment. That is a person getting hurt. A poor white person in a majority black neighborhood does not have systemic power. A poor mixed-race person in that same neighborhood does not have it either. Neither one of them can call up the system and get rescued. They are on their own. And the lower you are on the social ladder, the more exposed you are to whatever hatred is in the air around you. This is the part that the academic definition misses. It talks about power like it is one big switch that covers every white person equally. But power is local. Power is specific. And when someone has enough power over you to hurt you, exclude you, lie on you, take from you, and face no consequences for any of it, that is real power. That is operational power. And it does not matter what color the person holding it is. A mixed-race child growing up in a black neighborhood does not have systemic white power. A light-skinned person raised in a community that rejects them for looking too white does not have a safety net. They are not sitting in a boardroom somewhere. They are getting bullied on a playground. They are being shut out of the only community they have ever known. So when you dismiss anti-white hatred as not real or not important, you are also dismissing the people at the bottom who are getting destroyed by it. People who have no power. People who have no community. People who have nothing. That is the first problem. The second group is different. This group believes anti-white racism is real. They talk about it. They argue about it. Some of them have built entire platforms around it. But here is the thing they have not figured out yet. The most vulnerable victims of that hatred are not fully white. Let me say that again, because it matters. The people who get hurt the worst by anti-white hatred are people who are partially white, mixed-race people, light-skinned people, people who live inside communities where that hatred is practiced every single day, and they cannot escape it. A fully white person can usually remove themselves from a hostile environment. They have other places to go, other communities that will take them in. But a mixed-race person who grew up in a black community has nowhere else. That is their family. That is their neighborhood. That is their church. And when that community turns on them for their whiteness, they do not have a backup plan. So if you care about fighting anti-white hatred, you need to know that the people suffering the most from it are not the people you picture when you think about this issue. And some of them look nothing like what you expect a victim to look like. But here's what makes this even worse. When you look at who this group is actually willing to protect, it becomes very clear very fast. They want to protect fully white people. When a mixed-race person says, "I am also a victim of this hatred," the response is silence. Or worse, the response is, "You are not really one of us." Think about what that means. It means there is a group of people who say anti-white hatred is a serious problem, but they only want to stop it for people who are white enough to count. That is a threshold. That is a racial purity standard being applied inside of a movement that claims to be fighting racial injustice. And if you cannot see the problem with that, I do not know what to tell you. We already know white people as a whole do not see us as theirs. We already know black people as a whole do not see us as theirs. Both sides have made that very clear. So telling this entire group of people that they cannot have their own community and must just make do is not a neutral position. It is a punishment. It is being punished for not being born monoracial. It is being told that because your parents came from two different backgrounds, you do not deserve the same sense of belonging that everybody else gets for free. And meanwhile, look at who does get community support in this country. There are countless programs and organizations for LGBTQ youth. There are shelters, hotlines, mentorship programs, advocacy groups, legal funds, and that is good. Those young people need that support, and they deserve it. But studies have shown that mixed-race children face higher rates of social isolation, identity conflict, bullying, and mental health struggles than their monoracial peers. The data exists. It has been published. And yet there is almost nothing built to support them. No programs, no organizations with any real reach. No hotlines, no shelters, no advocacy groups with any political weight. That tells you everything you need to know about how America feels about mixed-race people. It is not hatred. It is something almost worse. It is complete indifference. Nobody is actively trying to destroy us. They just do not care if we are destroyed. And there is no law and no movement and no community that requires them to. Let me do something that most people in this conversation refuse to do. Let me take the term apart and see if it holds up, and if it does not, let me ask what we should use instead. Anti-white racism. Some people reject that term entirely. They say racism requires systemic power. Under that definition, a group without institutional power cannot be racist. Only prejudiced. Fine. Let us use that framework for a second. If a mixed-race child is excluded from a black community because they look too white, what do we call that? If a light-skinned person is physically attacked because of their appearance, what is the word? If someone is denied resources, denied connection, denied family bonds because of the white in their bloodline, what term fits? It is not just prejudice. Prejudice is a thought. This is action. This is organized. This is repeated. This is generational. This has patterns and rules and enforcement. If you do not want to call it racism, that is your choice. But you still have to call it something, because it is happening, and the people it is happening to need a word for it. They need a way to describe what they are living through so they can talk about it, organize around it, and fight it. Here's the thing that matters more than the label. Whatever you call it, the harm is the same. A child who is rejected by their family for being too light does not care about the academic definition. A teenager who gets beaten up for looking white does not feel better because someone told them it was prejudice and not racism. The bruises are the same. The loneliness is the same. The damage is the same. So we can argue about definitions all day. But while we argue, people are being hurt, and the argument is being used as a reason to not help them. That is the part I cannot accept. Because here is what it looks like from the outside. It looks like people on one side saying anti-white racism is not real, so we do not need to address it. And people on the other side saying anti-white racism is real, but only caring about fully white victims. Both sides leave the same people behind. Mixed race people, light-skinned people. The ones in the middle with no community and no protection. And if you hate someone for being partially white, you are still hating them for being white. The percentage does not give you a pass. You are targeting the white in them. That is what you're doing. Whatever word you put on it, the root is the same. Now let me talk about something that is going to be uncomfortable for everybody. Not just one side. Both sides. Let us start with the people who say they want to fight anti-white hatred. If you believe that hating someone for being white is wrong, then it should be wrong regardless of how white they are. You do not get to draw a line and say we only protect people above a certain level of whiteness. Think about what that actually is. That is bigotry inside of a fight against bigotry. That is discrimination within the context of fighting discrimination. It is a wild concept. And the optics are terrible. Imagine saying out loud that you care about people being mistreated for their whiteness, but only if they are white enough. That is not a principle. That is a club with a dress code. And if you are willing to watch a mixed-race child get destroyed by the same hatred you say you are fighting, then you need to ask yourself what you are really fighting for, because it is not equality, it is not justice, it is preference dressed up in the language of fairness. Now let us talk to the other side. If you believe that racism is always wrong, that nobody should be judged by their skin color, that the legacy of hate in this country is a stain that needs to be cleaned, then you cannot look at a light-skinned person being targeted for the white in their blood and say that does not count. You cannot say discrimination is the worst thing in the world and then refuse to see it when it goes in the direction you did not expect. Because here is the logic gap. If a system that punishes people for how they were born is the core of what is wrong with racism, then that system is wrong no matter who is running it. If the problem is judging people by their blood and their appearance, then judging people by their blood and their appearance is the problem, not just when white people do it. Always. Both sides have the same blind spot. They have drawn a circle around who they are willing to protect, and mixed-race people are outside of every circle. One side does not see us because we are not white enough. The other side does not see us because we are not black enough. And both sides feel completely justified in leaving us out. That is not justice. That is two different versions of the same failure. I need to talk about something that nobody wants to hear. But it is true, and it matters. The history of racism against black people in America began with fear. White people feared what would happen if black people gained power. They feared losing control. They feared being outnumbered in their own communities. And that fear was used to justify doing terrible things to people who had done nothing wrong. That fear led to slavery. It led to Jim Crow. It led to lynching and redlining and 100 other systems designed to keep one group on top by holding another group down. And the excuse was always the same. We have to protect our own. We have to guard our borders. We have to make sure our people come first. Now I need you to pay very close attention to what I am about to say. That same fear is now operating inside parts of Black America, and it is aimed at mixed-race people. The fear of being replaced. The fear of losing what little has been gained. The fear that someone who does not look like you is going to take what belongs to you. That fear is real. I understand where it comes from. Generations of being exploited will do that to a community. I am not dismissing the history, but here is what history also teaches us. When fear becomes the reason you hurt innocent people, you have become the thing you were afraid of. It does not matter how valid the fear is. The person you are hurting did not cause your pain. They were just born looking a certain way, and you are punishing them for it. White people feared black power and used that fear to justify cruelty. Black people fear losing black identity and are using that fear to justify cruelty toward mixed people. The pattern is identical, the direction is different, the damage is the same, and the people who pay the price are always the ones with the least power. Always. It is never the people at the top who suffer when a community starts drawing lines around who belongs. It is the ones at the bottom, the ones who cannot fight back, the ones who cannot leave, the ones nobody speaks for. That was black people under Jim Crow. And that is mixed-race people right now. Let me tell you something that should scare you. Mixed-race people in America have almost no legal protection as a group. We are not recognized as a distinct community. We do not have our own census category in any way that matters. We do not have community infrastructure. We do not have advocacy organizations with any real power. We do not have political representation that speaks specifically to our issues. We are outnumbered in every room we walk into. We are lied on by people who have the numbers to make their version of events stick. We are sabotaged by people who see us as threats to their identity. And nobody has to care. Nobody is required to listen. Nobody faces consequences for what is done to us. Here is a comparison that I think makes the point. Black people in America spent generations facing hatred backed by law. The system was built to hurt them on purpose. That was malice. It was deliberate. It was designed. And it took a massive movement to even begin to dismantle it. Mixed-race people face something different. We do not face malice from the system. We face apathy. Nobody built a system to destroy us. They just never built anything to protect us. And when we get caught in the crossfire between two communities that both reject us, nobody is required to notice. Nobody is required to act. Nobody is required to care. Malice is a boot on your neck. Apathy is the whole room watching it happen and deciding it is not their problem. Both will kill you. But apathy is harder to fight because there is nobody to point at. There is no villain. There is no law to overturn. There is just silence. And silence is the hardest thing in the world to organize against. That is not a complaint. That is a fact. And facts do not care about feelings. Every other group in this country has some form of community. Every nationality has organizations and cultural centers. Every religion has houses of worship and networks. The LGBTQ community built infrastructure from scratch because they had to. They spoke up, they organized, they demanded to be seen, and it worked. Mixed-race people have not done that yet. And until we do, nothing changes. We are waiting for someone else to see us. We are waiting for black communities to accept us or white communities to claim us. And both sides have made it clear that they are not going to do that. Not fully, not in the ways that matter. Both sides have the right to define their own membership. I am not arguing with that. That is their choice. But that choice has a consequence. And the consequence is that we need our own community. We need our own voice. We need our own infrastructure. Not because we are better than anyone, not because we want to separate from anyone, but because we exist. We have always existed, and we deserve a place that does not require us to erase half of who we are just to be allowed in the room. I need to be very clear about something. This video is not an attack on black people. It is not an attack on white people. It is not asking anyone to accept us. It is not begging to be let into a group that does not want us. I believe both sides have the right to define their own communities. Black people have the right to decide what black identity means to them. White people have the right to do the same. I'm not here to argue with that, but we have that same right, and we have never used it. We have spent our entire existence waiting for one side or the other to tell us who we are. And both sides have answered. They have said, "You are not one of us." Fine. Message received. So now what? Now we build. That is what every other group in history did when they found themselves without a home. They did not sit around waiting for permission. They built one. They found each other. They created organizations. They spoke up. They made noise. They demanded to be counted. There are communities in this country for every nationality, for every religion, for every sexual identity and gender identity and cultural identity you can name. There are advocacy groups and cultural centers and entire political movements built around the idea that people with shared experiences deserve a place to come together. Mixed-race people do not have that. Not in any real way. Not in any way that has power or structure or a voice that gets heard. That is not acceptable. Not anymore. Things will only change when we care. And I mean we. Mixed-race people, light-skinned people, People who have lived between two worlds their entire lives and never been fully claimed by either one. Nothing happens until we care enough to speak out. Nothing changes until we care enough to face the criticism that is going to come. Because it will come. Both sides will push back. One side will say we are being divisive. The other side will say we are being dramatic. Some will say we already have privilege and need to sit down. Others will say we are not their problem. Let them talk. Every group that ever built something had to push through resistance to do it. Every community that exists today was told at some point that it did not need to exist, that the people in it were making too big a deal out of their situation, that they should just be grateful and be quiet. We are done being quiet. This is not about anger. This is not about revenge. This is not about making anyone the villain. This is about the simple fact that millions of people in this country share an experience that nobody talks about. We are caught between communities that will not fully have us. We face discrimination from multiple directions. We have no legal category, no political voice, no organized community, and no safety net. And every single one of those problems is fixable, but only if we fix them ourselves. Nobody is coming to save us. Nobody is going to wake up one day and decide that mixed-race people deserve a seat at the table. We have to build our own table. We have to pull up our own chairs. We have to stand up and say out loud that we are here, we matter, and we are done waiting for permission to exist. The time to speak is now. The time to organize is now. The time to protest, to demand recognition, to build the community that should have been built a long time ago is right now. Not tomorrow, not when it is safe, not when both sides are ready to hear it. Now. Discrimination is either wrong or it is not. It does not get an exception based on the direction it travels. And the people it hurts the most are always the ones at the bottom. The ones without power, the ones without a name for what is happening to them. We have a name now. We have a voice now. The only question left is whether we are willing to use it. I wrote a book about this. It is called Jerome Crow. It documents the pattern, the research, and the evidence behind everything I have said here. But this video is the first step, the human argument behind the data. If any of this spoke to you, share it. If you are mixed race and you have lived this, speak up. Find each other. We are not as alone as they want us to believe. We never were.